Welcome, everyone, to Misconceptions. I am excited to welcome Adina Landa. Welcome, Adina.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so glad that you said yes. I met you at a shluchas convention, as I not so jokingly said that probably one of the highlights of my career was being invited to the Knesset Shluchos. For anybody who's not familiar with that, it is a group of incredible women who are part of the Chabad Lubavitch movement. Pretty much people from around the entire globe. And I had the opportunity to hear you speak and to tell your story. And I knew that this was someone that I needed to meet more personally and also to introduce to the people who listen to Misconceptions. So thank you for saying yes. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm quick to say
So
yes. I feel very happy to share.
I'm so glad because honestly, I think
Yeah.
it's the number one thing we're gonna kind of accomplish in creating a Misconceptions podcast is
Yes.
to break through stigmas, break through the inability to talk about hard things.
Yep.
Because the more language we give to it and the more faces, truthfully, that we give to it, the greater
Mhm.
likelihood that someone will say, "I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. I can
Yeah.
get help and I can get better." So,
1000%.
tell us who you are. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay. So Adina Landa. I grew up actually in San Diego, California. Um, Depends how much you want to know.
Tell us
I
about you.
Yeah. So my dream was always to build Jewish community and start a Chabad from scratch. And so that was what me and my husband decided to do. And about a year and a half after we got married, we moved to a place in Northern California, Novato, that I had never heard of before, never visited, don't have any family around here. We just went to check it out. There's no local Jewish presence at all, like any kind in this specific city and the county. You could drive 15, 20 minutes to other places, but not here. And we just decided like we're gonna do this. And so we um moved here. I had two little kids and I was actually a week after we moved, I found out I was expecting my third. So I'm on shluchas here. I have
Did you
six
grow
kids
up in
right
a Chabad
now.
family? Like, you grew up in a Chabad family that was on shluchas in San Diego?
No,
No.
so my parents are Bali Tshuva. They both have like I always say like my story is boring. My parents' stories are fascinating. So they're both Bali Tshuva. They both became from like I guess through Chabad really. So by the time they got married, they were from, and then I was born into it. And I have three siblings and like with them. And so we just yeah, I was raised with
Like,
it, but not on shluchas. No.
okay, and your siblings, are they on shluchas as well? Is this
Nope.
something? No.
I'm the
So
only
this
one
was
in
just
my
you.
family that's on shluchas, and my husband's the only one in his family that's on shluchas. Yeah.
Oh, impressive, impressive. So you were married how many years before you moved out of town?
Um just like a year and a half, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you moved to a new community. You're beginning to build a life there. Obviously, probably a lot of loneliness or aloneness or isolation. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like going to like where there are no Jews or there's no Jews that you know personally yet, I would say, right?
Right. Yeah. Um it's interesting. I actually don't feel so isolated and I didn't feel very alone. I loved it. I was so excited. Um Isolation or the aloneness comes when you realize how much we actually need community, right? Like they say like it takes a village and really postpartum, which I guess we'll get to and we'll talk about, realizing like what it's like to have a community that like they're dropping off meals and breakfast and there's chesed girls and there's so much like infrastructure to be able to have help. Whereas here, I have no family nearby and yeah, no village, right? Obviously I'm, close to other shluchais that live in, different drive, we'll drive up to an hour. My kids, I drive over an hour to school each way and we'll drive, but it's just different in that way. But yeah, it's definitely a different experience. We're the only people here who are Shomer Shabbos and who keep kosher and who actually, I shouldn't say the only now. Now we have like a few here and there, a little bit, but we're really the only people like us here, I should say,
Right.
which is definitely a new experience. But I love it. I would never live here. I would never choose to live here. I always tell people in my community, like I wouldn't be like, oh, let me raise my kids in Novato. But because of what we do, I love it. I love being here. I love the work we do.
Okay.
Um,
And the reason I bring that up and kind of like to highlight that because I think that some of the contributing like risk factors potentially and not ascribing any of that to you but potentially that feeling of like isolation can really contribute deeply to the development of difficulty postpartum because we need that
mm,
village so badly. So
yeah.
maybe let's start at the beginning of your story. What you spoke about and tell us about your pregnancy postpartum. Where did things go right and then where did things begin to take a turn?
Yeah. So my first baby was born when we were still living in New York. We were living in Crown Heights, and everything was smooth and fine. I had easy I mean, I don't want to say easy 'cause I don't think anything's easy, but like a relatively straightforward pregnancy and birth. And I just sailed right into motherhood. Like it was great. It was not hard. It was totally fine. And I got pregnant again when she was 5 months old. And and I was totally fine with that because everything was like smooth sailing. And he was an extremely difficult baby. And so I don't know if it had to do with that or if I had undiagnosed postpartum. I was like miserable after my second baby. It was really, really hard for me. The transition was hard for me. He was just extremely hard baby. And then when he was, I think, 10 months old, I was pregnant with my third. So I had 3 kids under 3. And that's when and we moved on shluchas in that time. So we're talking about like a lot of transition. I have 2 little kids. I found out I was pregnant a week after we moved here. And then so we're within the first 6 months of living here. No, that doesn't make sense. Hold on. Yeah, we moved here in March and my baby was born in October. So it was like very new. That was like very, very new. And I had 3 little kids, um, and a new shluchas. And so the first time I experienced postpartum depression, like to this extent, to the extent where it was like, oh, something's wrong and you need help, was after my third. It didn't come right away. So I remember being totally fine by the bris. And I was like, I think at 4 week when he was like 4 weeks old. So we're talking about like, yeah, I guess October, yeah, November already. November. I remember like my mother was going to watch the kids, and me and my husband were going to go have a meeting about Hanukkah, and planning all the Hanukkah events that were coming up. And I just started sobbing in the middle of that meeting, and I was just like, I can't do this. I can't plan this. And that was the first indication, I think, that like I'm not okay. Although I shouldn't even say that. I didn't know what was going on. Like, I did not know what was going on. And so it just was like this series of starting of just being miserable, a lot of dark thinking. I'm not good enough. My husband needs a different wife. My kids need a different mother. I chose the wrong life. I need to run away. I have too much responsibilities. And it came with a lot of other strange like symptoms that I didn't only looking back. Like I I was like, I don't know how to take care of this baby. I would be like, does he need to eat? Does he need to sleep? I was like, there was a lot of like anxiety mixed in with it that I like hired a postpartum doula to like help me understand how to take care of a baby. And like looking back, like this was my third baby, It was very and like when she came, I was so anxious. I'm like, but how do you know? How do you know that he needs to sleep right now? And then she was like trying to show me how to put him to sleep. And I'm like, oh, but look, he wakes right up. I was like, there was like this uh anxiety that definitely came along with it. Um, then simple everyday tasks became hard. I couldn't take care of my kids. I couldn't make dinner. I couldn't just so there's so many pieces to it. Um, I think the biggest thing I didn't realize is that postpartum depression has cognitive deficits, it has emotional deficits, it has like almost like physical deficits, mental like there's a whole range of like stuff that happens. Um, anyway, so I reached out to my mentor and she said, my mashpia, she's my mentor, and thank God, she's actually experienced this plenty. And the first thing though, she didn't like. She thought, okay, you're just jumping too much into things postpartum. You need to like exercise and eat healthy and rest. Like she was kind of like going the self care route first, not thinking that there was like something bigger here. Um, and even that, I was like, how do you like what should I do for exercise and like what should I eat healthy? And even like downtime in my room, like I'd go in my room and I would not feel calm in my body. Right.
Mm,
And which is like one of the things where it's like it's not always about rest. It's not just
right.
like, oh, go in your room and rest. I was like an anxious mess in my room. I didn't know how to like be regulated. I didn't know what to do with myself. Um and and so I tried the self-care route, and even that, like, my husband had to, like he had to, like, take me exercising and put food in front of me, and it was getting worse. It wasn't getting any better, um, until I was, like, in touch with somebody else who then called my mentor and was like, She's not okay." Like, and then, my mashpia was like, "Oh, I thought the self-care was working because I didn't hear from her." And then she spoke to me and she's like, "Okay, you need to go right now. You need to go to" I went to a psychiatric nurse or a nurse practitioner for medication. She referred me to her therapist who lives near me. And that just, yeah, that began my
That
journey.
turned things around. I want to back up to that conversation, that comment that you said, because it was so powerful. You said that it has so many different deficits, like cognitive, emotional, physical. I want to bring those down for people. If you remember, and I think one of the things that's also really powerful when someone's in the depths of an emotional, challenge or tremendous difficulty, often our memory of what was happening at that time can be flawed, right? Like it could be
Yeah,
a little bit muddy or a little foggy.
very.
Um, if you can, What do you remember if you would say it has cognitive deficits? What does that mean? When you describe your own experience, what was that like?
Yeah. Like all of a sudden, like if you would ask me to follow a recipe, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do something that had multiple steps. If you said I couldn't make my kids lunches because just make a lunch felt like this it's like as if you were asking me to build a skyscraper. But if you said put the apple in the lunchbox, I could do that. I could do like a one step. If you said put the flour into the bowl, I could do that. But I couldn't anything felt like this huge colossal ask of me, to say make dinner. I was like, what should I make? And like, do we have the ingredients and where are the ingredients? And like, it just became like this huge anxiety inducing thing. And yeah, and it was very strange for me. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, why can't I just make my kids lunch? And that's
Right.
what I mean by cognitive deficits. We think of depression. I I think the biggest misconception people think of depression is you can't get out of bed. No, like there's so much more to that. And a lot of times people do get out of bed. It was a battle every day. I would like fight in my brain, like, I don't want to get up, get up. I don't, and I always got up, so I feel like that's the tiniest piece of what happens in,
Yeah. I've heard
yeah, in a
people
depression.
describe like, and I heard people describe it as like an agitated depression, that it's, but you're right. It's
Hmm.
not always in bed under the covers. It can be like, I'm up, but I'm also I'm moving, I'm functional ish,
Yes.
but it's not working. Right. I think
Yes.
it's quite fascinating to hear how you describe like the inability to follow directions or some of that executive functioning component of your regular normal life that is so crucial when we're dealing with three little kids. I
Yeah.
can imagine that is even more complicated. What about when you say physical deficits? How did you experience that?
Okay, so that one I was like, I don't know if it's physical or not, but it's like the depression was like heavy. I physically felt like there was someone like stomping on my chest. I felt like there was a dark cloud over me. I felt like I was like walking through the day, like in big heavy boots through mud. It felt physical to me. It was like, because I remember so many times being like, and I didn't have only one depression, but I felt like I can't feel this way in my body. Like, get me out of my body. I'm
Mm,
so uncomfortable with these physical sensations. So that is what I would say is like the physical uh,
that makes a lot of
deficit.
sense. That makes a ton
Mhm.
of sense. And what about
Yep.
emotional?
And then emotional was like such dark thinking, but I just thought it was true. Like I did not believe that, oh, there's like something called depression talking. Like I would tell you, like, I feel so bad for my husband. He deserves a better wife. And then like in front of my therapist, she's like, what do you think? And he's like, I'm so happy. I know she's going through a hard time. Like, we're gonna get through this. And I was like, he's just lying. Like I couldn't believe it. Um, I'm not a good enough mother. I'm the only one, of course, experiencing this, feeling this, thinking this way. I'm just no good. Everyone would be better off without me. Just so much negative black thinking. Yeah.
Do you remember ever feeling like, I mean, I hear a lot of the words that you're saying to me are like suicidal thinking, right? Like my kids would be
Hmm.
better off without me. It is to me, that's a biggest red flag as a therapist when I hear somebody say that, or I'm a burden to my family or my husband.
Yeah.
To me, that's like red, 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 red flags all over the place. Did anybody ever ask you about feeling
Yeah.
suicidal? They
Yep.
did.
Always. Yeah. Every psychiatrist I went to and everything. And I always said, I'm not going to kill myself. Just
Yep.
I just sometimes wish I wasn't here. Like, I just wish I didn't exist or I didn't have to go through this experience. Or like, yeah, they would be better off without me. But I was like, I was not in any danger of doing anything to myself. I know that's not always the case, but I was pretty certain of that. Like, I never contemplated doing anything.
Is it hard for you to talk about now? Like when we're having these casual conversations full of like, you know, such a difficult, experience, and we've only touched the surface of it. But I'm just noticing like this must be so complicated for you to talk about. I imagine.
So what's interesting is like I'm in such a different place now, like such a different place. Like I've done a lot of work. I've had a really, I guess, beautiful journey. Hashem puts us on a journey that it's actually not so hard for me to talk about. And more because I don't know, maybe I share too much. I don't know. I'm just like anyone I could save from these kind of experiences, anyone I could, empower with knowledge or with understanding or with anything, I'm like, I'll do it. Because I definitely felt very alone, very alone. I also had a lot of thoughts about like, I'm not going to do this again. I'm not going to have more kids and everyone's having more kids. The whole more kids thing, that was like this huge heaviness that I carried around thinking I'm going to be like the black sheep in the bondage.
Right.
Just that aloneness and that, yeah, I guess I just want to help people. And that's why I'm like, no, I'm going to talk about it.
Okay. Could we talk a little bit about that pressure of family growth? Lubavitch has their own, specific perspective. I'm interested in hearing that, but also just the broader, I think we in religious communities, some of it I would say is post-Holocaust, that idea of like we need to replenish the world, right? Like to rebuild the generations. But I think it's much bigger than that at this point in
Mhm.
2024. It's a sense of like, this is what it means to be religious families, to build large families. And for somebody who's not
Yeah.
familiar with a religious world or religious life, the expectation is large is not three or four. The expectation of large is more than that, right? And
Yep.
I think that it really is complicated when for any reason someone can't grow to the size that they would like to or they imagine growing.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is definitely the harder piece for me to talk about because there was a lot of shame involved and there might even still be. But I do remember dating my husband being like, "Yeah, I'm gonna have 20 kids and homeschool them all," right? Like as if before I ever became a mother and knew what that even entailed. But yeah, it was always my dream. I'm just gonna like keep having kids because I had no idea what that even meant. But I think less the education around like, repopulating the world after the Holocaust. I just got like the mitzvah of Peru or Revu. It's like the most special mitzvah, the most important thing we could do, our role as mothers. And that, and there's a lot of talks of the Rebbe about like not stopping just because you fulfilled the halachic obligation of one boy, one girl, and bringing a neshama down into the world, like just the beauty of it. It didn't come along with, you know, um, anything to counterbalance that, I guess, of like, and you might be experiencing these things, and there might be these scenarios where birth control is actually really important and even a mitzvah to do in that scenario, or like, and you need to be healthy and happy to have these children, like I remember when I was pregnant with my third, actually, like visiting one of my mentors, she's like, okay, I'm going exercising, come with me. And I was like, come with you. Like, I'm going to huff. I'm like huffing and puffing. I'm like, how do you do this? She's like, wait, do you tell me you don't exercise? And I was like, no. And she said, Adina, if you want to have a big family, you must exercise. And I said, no one said that. No one said that. No one said like it comes along with and take really good care of your body so that you can do this. It was just like, this is what we do, and that was like very interesting to me. And of course, I've changed tremendously on my mindsets around that since then. But I feel like I got a little off track of what you were
But
asking.
no,
Oh,
but
so
yeah,
I just never thought about it. I always just thought like, of course I'm going to do this. Right. Um, and then there was,
real life.
successive children and then postpartum. And then it's like, then I'm like, wait, I need to think this through. Like if I was pregnant right now, I would not be able to, to manage and to handle this. Um, and then so much shame around, wait, but I should be able to handle it and other people can handle it. And like, what does this mean? And so everything done under the guidance of a Rav and a Mashpia and a doctor and a psychiatrist. And it's all under that kind of guidance. But that has also really opened up my eyes
Do you think
to,
anything's changing? Like, do you think anything's changing in the education from the Rebbe's directive or the encouragement of, this is the ideal versus but there's also, but all these other things that come along with that, like kind of like it's not a mandate, but like that kind of like directive, that kind of
yeah.
encouragement. Are you hearing any shifts and changes? Because I mean, the women I'm working with definitely are struggling with this piece. It's like, but
Mhm.
I'm supposed to, but if I can't, the shame is just like fills the buckets, like deep, deep
Yep.
buckets of shame of everything you just said. Why not me? Why do everybody else looks so good? I spoke with a mom recently who just had a new baby and she's like, what about all the, and this is not her first, and she does not have postpartum depression, but she's like, but what about all those women don't look so tired? How come I'm so tired? Right. Like there's so much comparison. And I'm wondering, do
Mhm.
you think that there's any shifting in the education and how we talk about these things?
I think there is. I don't know that everyone would agree with the shifting. A lot of people would like, say that it's not good, not agree with it. But I think there's classes now on birth control and how to use it and when to use it and what are the right kinds. Like I didn't even know that. Yeah, I didn't even know. So when I had to go in at the doctor hands me a pill and I take a pill and I'm already in postpartum depression and that just added hormones and things went even way worse. And then I call this like from nurse practitioner and she's like, get off that. And I'm like, what? No one told me. Like, I didn't know what to look out for. Like, it has to be non-hormonal in this scenario. And it's so much lack of education. So I think that there's a lot more education now. I think my mashpia said to me, because I just thought you just need to keep having children. Like I was shocked when she said, like, you need to call a Rav. And she said, no, you need to have children happily. And I was like,
Mm.
no, no one said that part, that like, how you feel matters. How you feel in the moment matters. And she also said, because another thing that's taught a lot is Kabbalah's all, right? We're going to just do this. We do what the right thing and we don't, um, I don't know, acceptance
I'm
of the yoke, like
questioning.
just doing
Yeah.
doing it. And I'm a huge Kabbalah Solnik, right? You tell me what to do, I'm going to do it. And she told me, there's no source for this. I'm going to just put this on the podcast. But she said to me, Peru or Revu is the one mitzvah you do not do out of Kabbalah Sol.
Mm.
And it was so helpful for me to hear that. It was, and it makes so much sense to me. I don't have a source for it. I'm just quoting her. um, and it has helped me, and I've repeated that to other people because I'm like, you can't just bring a child into the world when you're like miserable and not managing and not excited about your pregnancy. Like, and the difference for the pregnancies where there were ones, it depends how much of my journey you want to hear, but where I had like davened to become pregnant, like so different. It was just such a different experience. And so um, I like sharing that. I don't know that everyone would agree, but
But I think what you're also saying is that your voice matters also, meaning your feelings, your opinion matters. And it can't just
Mhm.
be this external thing that I'm being told that this is what I need to do, because I know for sure that when a woman goes to a Rav and says, I'm not okay and I'm struggling and I need help, or I don't know that I can have another baby right now, I have almost never seen a Rav push back on say, just do it anyways. Right. I really haven't. I
yeah,
consistently will
you're right.
see where her voice really matters, her perspective, opinion, health, mental health matters. Sometimes I feel like it gets lost in translation. So that meaning her voice gets told to her husband, who then talks to the rabbi, and then it doesn't
Mm,
necessarily get translated properly. And in
yeah,
those cases, as a therapist, one of the things I like to do is say to them, I need you to go use your own voice and go speak to the rabbi. Like, go speak
yeah,
to the Rav, because the experience is completely different. And all of a sudden the Rav's like, no, 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 at least a year, at least 2 years. Do not come back to me before then. Like, he heard her in a
yeah,
way that her
yeah. I
husband
always
cannot
had the most
translate.
incredible responses. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I even had like, so after my third, I was like, I'm never doing this again. And so there was a long period of time where I felt that way. And then when it did change, and I called a Rev, I was like, okay, I'm ready. And he's like, no, you need to wait 2 months. I was like, wait, what? Like this was after waiting a long time. I'm like, I'm ready. He's like, you just became ready. Call me back in 2 months and I want to make sure you're
Right.
still ready. And I was
Wow.
like, what? Like that, like really floored me
I
because
mean, that
there
shows
was like,
wisdom, right? Right. It
yeah,
does not show wisdom. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 100%.
So talk to me about, what did recovery look like? You're finally getting diagnosis, right? Somebody's finally saying to you, this is what we're
Yeah.
looking at. They sent you to a psychiatric nurse practitioner,
Yep.
started you in therapy. What was the
hmm
trajectory like from there?
So yeah, so I started medication. I know for some people that's like a huge journey. For me, it just felt like I didn't question it. I was just like, I need help. Like this is not okay. I wasn't like, do I want to go the medication route or not? It was just like, someone fix me. Um, so I right away started medication, which was helpful. You have to get to the therapeutic dose and all that, but it was right away the right thing the first time, all that. And I started therapy, and then it's like a slow. We think that healing is like linear, when it always really looks like this. So there's like some good days and some bad days, and then more good days and less bad days, and and it's kind of like a slow progression. It's like climbing out of a hole, really coming out of depression. That's what it's like. Um, and and then I was doing a lot better in all the deficits wise, but I think of depression also as like it's like this big wave comes, right? Like this awful wave that you're kind of like drowning in. But then when the wave recedes, like all the pollution and junk that was under the water is left there because there was so much work that it uncovered for me to do in therapy. Even though I was like better, I didn't have postpartum anymore, so to speak, but I realized like I had really low self-confidence and that needed working on. And that I didn't have a strong identity of like who am I and what am I good at? And just certain things that really so I was like in and out of, and then I had postpartum depression again and things like that. But I was in and out of therapy for like 6 years until I feel like so solid. Yeah.
When do you remember feeling like the hope of like, okay, I'm going to get better? Like, did that happen very quickly or did it take time?
So I think like I kind of think of in depression, it's like 2 months of like real misery, like 2 months of just deep, dark awfulness. And then it kind of slowly gets better from there. I remember actually going, so my third was born in October, and the Kiddush HaShlachais that you were referring to at the beginning, right, is in like February-ish. And I went that year. I wasn't gonna go. And so I remember, so he was like what, 3 months old or something. I think it was like a little more than 3 months. And I was very fragile. So I was able to go and I was able to, but I was very sensitive, very vulnerable feeling, there was one workshop talking all about the blessings of a big family and the women up there all had 10 kids. I don't know, like that. And I just was like sobbing and I had to leave because in my mind, I was never going to do it again. And I'm going to be the black sheep in the Lubavitch. And, and I'm struggling. And, so I was very like fragile, is I guess what I would say. But like I was better already. I was already like, I mean, just the fact that I can get on an airplane, like what I said before, the cognitive deficits, I couldn't like, I wasn't functioning. So clearly here I was functioning, but I was in a very like vulnerable place. And then it just, like I knew I was going to get better. I saw that it was just slowly getting better and better. Um, yeah, it's hard to say when I felt fully, I don't like saying back to myself because I think we become new selves after every baby, but when I was just fully, not even thinking about it. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure because it
Right.
also came, like I said, with all the therapy, there was still like all the shame around, I'm gonna stop at 3, which I didn't,
Right.
but like
Right.
that shame I had to work through, or just I had a lot of stuff to work through. So it was still like part of part of me, part of my head.
Sure.
Yeah.
What do you think about tell me about how you made the decision to consider even trying again, to making that phone call to the Rav or to say, okay, I'm ready to take this risk because I'm sure it felt
Yeah.
very risky.
So what's interesting is that I actually davened for Hashem to make me want another child
Mm,
because in my mind, especially after hearing like this needs to be done happily, you don't do it out of Kabbalah's all. So I was like, okay, then I'm only gonna get pregnant again when I have a desire for it, and I have no desire for it. So I davened for Hashem that Hashem give me a desire because if I have a desire, then it's not a problem, so to speak. Um, right. So I really just davened for but the beginning was just like a no and working through all the shame around what a no would look like and what that would mean and all of that. And even just my thoughts around a big family. I remember my therapist saying like, what's a big family? Like, what's the number that you're supposed to have? Because I would talk about the Rebbe's words and she said, what's the number? And she was totally not from or anything. And I said, 10. So she said, so until you have 10 kids, you're not enough and you're not doing it right. And you're not. And I said, yeah. And just realizing that that was some belief I had, meaning I
yeah.
was at 3. When I had 6, I would still say it's not enough. And 7 and 8, I
Wow.
was just like, wow, I'm walking around with this false thing that like I have to have 10. And so it was like a lot of, yeah, kind of like working through that stuff. So, and then coming to a place where I'm like, Hashem, give me the desire. And he did. It just like literally was like ping one day.
So from the point where you were ready, what comes next for you? How do you prepare? I mean, I'm assuming there's some level of emotional, mental health preparation for getting
Yeah.
pregnant again.
Yeah. Yes. 1,000%. So first of all, okay. So first of all, getting the permission from a Rev, right? Which was interesting that he said, wait 2 more months from when I was like, I'm ready. Um, and then there was, um, coming to a place, which I did in therapy, coming to a place where even if I have postpartum depression, it's worth it. Like I had to be willing to go through that experience again. And I was. I was. I came to a point where I'm like, I'm willing to go through this again. I had gotten off of medication. I was like doing better. I had weaned off the medication. I was not on any medication. And then I also did my postpartum very differently than any of my first 3. And since then, I've done it very differently. And I talk about it. It might sound very extreme. I got this really mostly from my mashpia, who does pretty similar. But like, um, for example, the first 2 weeks, I'm in my bedroom. I don't even like leave my bedroom. I shut off my phone. I'm not available to the outside world. I have 0 responsibilities. I'm not in charge of my other kids. They can come in to my bedroom one at a time to see me and see the baby. I make this baby bubble that, I got like this second phone that has nothing else on it. And, in case my husband needs to text me basically. And then I would like slowly give the give the phone number to like a friend or something like that. But there was no social media. There was no telling everyone I had a baby, like leave that up to my husband. There was no like nothing. I had no outside world. It was just like me and baby and bonding. That's for sure, like the first 2 weeks. And then it's like this very slow, like, okay, now I can leave my bedroom, but I can't leave my bedroom, but like I'm mostly in bed or with baby, right? And then I'll be around the house, but still no responsibilities, no carpool, no bedtimes, no morning, no craziness, right? And it's like this very slow progression back into life, so to speak. For the first 6 weeks, which is such a arbitrary number that America gives us, but, in Canada, it's 11 months, but, like, for the first 6 weeks, I'm not going places, I'm not driving, I'm not taking on responsibilities, I'm not, I'm just in this baby bubble that I slowly like emerge from. And that was miraculous, really. Um, After my fourth, I got postpartum depression again. And it was awful. And the difference though was that after the third, there was a lot of anger at the baby and having a baby. And after my fourth, I loved her and I loved being in my baby bubble. And I just was miserable with the depression. Like the depression was awful, but not the experience of having a baby. And that was beautiful. And then I had a fifth and a sixth and did not have postpartum depression. And that was like very redeeming. Be like,
Wow.
I can do this again and not have and that was like really incredible. But each one I also get like even more more, I guess, intense, whatever word you want to use. But I'm just like, now I don't know how people do it differently. I really don't. I don't know how people jump back into things with a 2 week old baby.
Well, the question is
Um,
if they should. I mean, I think
right.
what you're also describing, I mean, there's some historical, like, cultural experiences that this is exactly what they do. Like if you go to tribal Africa and China, like there's some very firm and rigid rules about you cannot leave the house, and you literally have to stay home for a week, for a month. And I think about how protective those ideas are and you kind of reconstructed that, where
Yeah. Probably in the
instead,
shtetl. I assume in the
I
shtetl it
have
was the
no
same
doubt.
thing, right? All the
You're
aunts
right.
and
Well, they
grandmothers took
weren't
care
running
of.
carpools,
Right.
right? They definitely weren't running
Right.
carpools and social
Right.
media. Like the
Yeah.
expectation was this is your job. Like you're at home
Yep.
taking care of your family.
Yes.
And how society does not really honor that. And it's this idea of like, and I think about how we would see these newly delivered moms at carpool and then we'd be like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing. Like you made it out to, you're doing carpool. Oh my God. Like, why are we lauding them versus saying, go home and get back into bed? You
Right.
know?
Right.
And what about, can you talk a bit about medication if you're willing?
Yeah.
Because I do think that, you weaned off of it after you really did a lot of the recovery work. In preparation for the next pregnancy, was there a medication plan in place for if this, then that? Was there a sense of that?
So there was like being in touch with my psychiatrist right after I had a baby. Yeah, every week, I think, touching base with her. And so I got on medication as soon as I realized, yeah, I'm not doing well. I'm not okay. This is not okay. And so then I got on medication and then I was like better, but like postpartum, I got through that. And then I had another depression, which was very strange. And there was like this successive, like I had another 4 depressions. No, yeah, I think another 4,
Four
like,
different
I would get better
episodes.
and then have a depression, get better and have a depression. So there was, like,
Mhm.
switching up the medication and figuring it out, and, it was, like, a really a hard first year, a really, really hard first year because we're like, "What is going on here?" And since then, I've stayed on medication through my pregnancies, through my postpartums. I think that is definitely a piece that helped me with my, 5th and 6th and
Yeah,
contributed
I
to
want you
not
to say
having
that one more
postpartum.
time. I like literally
Okay.
want to say that one more time. When you said, "Oh, in 5th and 6th, I didn't have depression." And I'm like, "I know, but you also I love that you honored the other route that you needed to take.
Yes.
That
Yes.
that being that to be redeemed is not to say, and I did it without meds. To be redeemed
Yes.
is to say, I did it with meds and I had a
Yes.
really much better postpartum. Talk to me about that
1,000%.
because I think that's
Yeah.
such a loud that's the voice everybody needs to hear. So well, that's all the therapists are yelling at it, but like we're yelling that, but we want you to say
Right.
it.
I mean, like, my mindset around medication is so different than, like, what I hear from other people. To me, it's just like, but it's a great tool, and, like, why not if it could help you, right? I understand if someone has crazy, awful side effects, and then you might wanna try a different one, or I understand if you've tried all the medications and it hasn't worked for you, right? Like, I do understand that there's different scenarios,
Sure.
but for me, it's just like, oh my gosh, it just first of all, it's not a magic pill, right? Because it's enables you to do the work, right? It gets you to a therapeutic place where now you can do all the work you need to do. But just the boost, the feeling good, the like I'm like, why not? Like I don't understand. Like if I have to be on medication for the rest of my life, I'm like, no problem. I will do that.
Right.
It's changed. It's changed over time what I needed and dosages and happens to be I'm working with a naturopath right now who has helped me with some other supplements I need. So I was able to go down on my meds, but I'm not like, to me, it's not like the goal is be off of medication. The goal is be a healthy, happy, stable mother. And be available for my kids. That's the goal. And I think there's so much unnecessary suffering and struggling because people think that like, if I could just get through this, or it almost as if it's better to do this without medication. So let me just try. Like I can, I'm almost grateful that my depression was so bad
Mm.
that it wasn't a question. I wasn't, because sometimes people are like, but I'm this, I'm good, I'm functioning, but I just don't feel so happy all the time. Like where it's like there's even a debate to have whether they should go on medication. I'm almost grateful that there wasn't a debate. It was just like, this is awful. I'm not functional. I need help. Yeah,
Wow.
I
What
will be
what
on
were
it as
some
long
of the
as I need.
things that exactly, exactly. And I really commend you for saying it out loud. I admire you for doing it, but more importantly, I admire you for saying it out loud because somebody else is going to need to hear this and that it's okay and that you could do it without shame and you could do it with courage and you could just be like, this is just what I need to be, not only a good mom, but to be yourself, to be the
Yeah.
best version of you.
Yep.
That you deserve this kind of wellness. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Could we talk a little bit about whatever you're willing to share, but talk to me a little bit about your relationship with your husband through this process because, it sounded like he was incredibly supportive and helpful. And clearly he's supportive of you disappearing into the bubble for several weeks at a time, right? But
Not
talk a little
easy.
bit.
It's not easy on
I'm
him. I have to give him a
sure.
lot of credit.
I'm sure. But talk about the risk of the relationship or the strengths of the relationship that helped you through this.
Yeah. Yeah, a huge shout out to my husband, and he's incredible. He's absolutely incredible. The first time that this happened, I didn't know what was going on and he didn't know what was going on. So we were both just kind of like, what is happening? And I feel very grateful that Mama Shabia called him because she had experience with this and was like, here's what you need to do for Adina, like put food in front of her. Don't ask her what she wants to eat, just put food in front of her, things like that. And he was just like, yeah, tell me what I can do to help her. So he was absolutely supportive. Now, it's not easy on him at all because when I go through a depression, and like I said, I've been through several that didn't seem connected to postpartum. Um, I am not able to do things. I literally back out of not only our Chabad communal responsibilities, but our family responsibilities. And so now he's playing like mother, father, rabbi, rebbitzin, like just all of it.
Sure.
And um, he's learned he had to make challah for the first time in his life and make a cheesecake for Shavuos for the first time in his life. And he would come and be like, "What's the recipe?" I'm like, "I don't know." Like, go look in a cookbook, right? Like, even that question was like too much for me. Um, so just so much to his credit. Like in the end, we say that like going through challenge, it's like it strengthens our relationship. The fact that we've like been through hard stuff and come out stronger. He's super supportive. I think that a big piece of it is like he also, um, he also can have the assurance that I'm doing everything in my power to get better, which I think is important, right? Like he knows that I'm doing everything. Like, and for me, it was like, I remember where it was literally just about waiting for the medication to kick in. I was just like, tell me what to do and I'll do it. I said to my therapist, she's like, you're doing everything right. You're doing everything right. Like, I was like, I was like almost like to it. Like, I'm like, I'm exercising and eating healthy and I'm taking a rest and I'm doing my job. Like, I'm like, why am I still feeling so awful? Right. And it was really just a matter of the chemicals balancing
Yeah.
out, right? And so I think that's also hopeful, like that he's able to believe I'm doing whatever I can and I'm able to believe that like we're going to get through this and he's going to be okay. And it's allowed to be hard for him. That's a big piece, right? Because it's not easy. Like it's not easy to know, like almost like I have this like this guilt, like I'm doing this, if not for me, right? And that definitely was something I had to work through. Understanding that this is our journey. Hashem had this in plan for both of us. This is not me doing it to him. Um, same thing, like just when I'm, in the bedroom with the little baby and I hear tantruming outside and he's dealing with that. And part of me is like, I should just go help. And, this is really hard. And, reminding myself like, no, I am helping by staying right here. Um,
Mm.
yeah,
What do
it's,
you encourage? What would you suggest if you were talking to the husbands? Like if they happen to listen to the podcast, or what would you encourage them to know or understand? I appreciate that idea of like that she needs to be doing everything she can, and hopefully she is. But what are some of the things that you think could be protective of the relationship?
hmm. I mean, one thing I really just believe in now so much is outside help. Like I really, really, really think that if it's too much on the husband, or even if it's not, like like if you had a housekeeper who was doing all the cleaning, right, then it wouldn't be a point of contention like that she can't, that he doesn't want to do it or she can't do it. Like it doesn't matter anymore because it's on neither of you. Same with childcare, same with so definitely getting a lot of help. Um, it's it's a good question. I mean, because I'm coming from the wife perspective, I'm like, I needed to hear so much of like, it's okay and we're gonna get through this. Like I needed him to like be strong for me. Um, I think I remember one time, I think my mishpi also told me to do this. Like I wrote a letter from him to me of everything I
Wow.
wanted him to say to me. And then I hand it to him and I'm like, this is what you think, right? Like you believe because we need to hear certain things. But my thought is like, so do they. right? They need a lot of appreciation. They deserve a lot of appreciation for the fact that they're shouldering so much through either our postpartum or through our, so I think it really goes both ways, like acknowledging like this is hard on both of us and we're going to get through it. And um I think making
Mm.
time for the relationship also, like I mean, that was one of the things also postpartum is like I didn't want any conversation that would bring in any stress. There was no like stress allowed in my baby bubble of my bedroom. So anything that would bring stress, it was like a no. But talking together at the end of the day, or um, that kind of thing, I think is really important to make sure that
Mhm.
your connection's really strong. Um, which we did a lot of.
Thinking about, kind of one of the things I hear from women is like, how do I know when it's time for me to stop because it's too much or it's too hard, or just because it's time for me to stop? And I imagine when you're dealing with knowing the consequence or the potential consequences of of a postpartum, depression, um, how do you determine for yourself? Like, what were some of the things that you were looking at to say, I'm ready to try again? Because you didn't only try again once, you tried again several times, right? And
Yeah,
and did continue to have children. So how do
yeah.
you how would you guide, or what was it just for yourself? What was it like for you to say, am I ready? Versus just the desire, but also, is this the right thing for us to do or the right thing for me to do?
Yeah. So there was the desire, but I was also in a very good place emotionally, physically. I had a lot of help. I have a lot more help now than I did when I had 3 under 3. And it's not because of finances. People always ask me. I'm like, it's literally because I believe that this is how I'm going to get through motherhood in a happy way. I want to look back with good memories. And when I had 3 under 3, I had the mindset of everyone does this. We should all be doing this. I thought I should be able to keep my house clean, get dinner on the table, and take care of 3 little kids. And they weren't like in preschools or anything. I thought like even when my mashpia said you need to get more help, I was like, but everyone does this. Like I thought there was something wrong with me even for needing more help. Instead of like, now I think so differently. Now I'm like, we all deserve tons and tons of help. Like someone said to me, and it's not like a rule, but she's like, for every kid you have, get another day of the week,
Oh, I
And
love
not
it.
that that should be a rule, but yeah, I've got 6 kids and I've got 5 days a week. I'm like, I could do with six. But like, I wish I had this mindset then. I would for sure have felt differently and for sure would have helped in many ways contribute to the way I look back at that time. Um, what was your
Yeah.
question?
I was saying,
You
quick
remind me.
question about like making the decision to continue,
This
making
is
the
to continue,
continue.
right. So
Yeah.
I definitely had a lot more help in place. I was feeling really good. I mean, my husband's always ready. So in some ways, someone could look at that as very pressuring. I switched that to that's very beautiful. Like he's always ready. So whenever I'm ready, he's on board. Which I can look at, yeah, which is very beautiful. And yeah, it just felt very ready and very okay. Like I have all the things in place that I can like happily and healthily welcome another baby into our family.
Mhm.
Um,
Right. Do you imagine a time where it would be hard for you to say no more?
that it would be hard for me to say no more.
Mhm.
Um,
Meaning if you have your mindset on 10 or 12, that, because I know
yeah.
that that's what women have their sights set on certain numbers. And if you reached a point where you said, I'm actually doing very well, but it wouldn't be smart for me to bring in another, just try for another pregnancy. Do you imagine that a hard space for you to be in?
Um, yes. Yes. So I used to always kind of obsess about the number and how many and where am I going to get to. And again, my mishpia would quote her over and over, but she would
I
always
like
just tell
this
me,
woman. I need to meet her.
I know. She's like, slow down. It's one by one. You like, you can't think, like it's just one by one. Are you ready for the next one? And after I lost a baby, so then after my fourth, when I was ready, got pregnant, and 5 months into the pregnancy, yeah, it found out that the baby wasn't viable and I had to go through a DNC. And that was really heartbreaking. I felt like Hashem was like punching me in the gut a little bit there because I was like, it takes so much for me to get through postpartum and then to get ready. And then this. But what it did show me was that, yeah, we don't get to choose. I'm not going to decide a number. I'm going to say, can I have another child happily and healthily? Can I bring another child happily, healthily into my family? And so I don't know. Like even right now, I have six, and I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna have another one or not. Like Hashem will let me know. So I just
I
kind of
love that
keep it.
perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah. I love that perspective. It's for what I can do right now in this moment in time versus always the planning for more or different for the future.
yes, Yeah. When I had my
Yeah.
6, I was like new, like, I feel like, I don't know if this is for all women. This is another thing. I'm like, maybe it's just me. It's like constant chatter, constant chatter. I'm going to do another one. I'm going to do this again, another baby. Like, so even postpartum, holding my little newborn baby, I was like, am I going to do this again? Like, because it's a lot. And I remember asking her, and she's like, Adina, if you think about a future baby, you're taking away from the baby in your arms right now. It's
Beautiful.
like, you're not
Mhm.
allowed to think about a future baby right now. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's just taking me back to the present. Like, here is where I am right now. And the future is not up to me anyway.
Wow. In I love this conversation. And in wrapping it up for today, can you think about and share what you would say are the top 2 or 3 misconceptions that you wish women would know or couples would understand about the postpartum depression experience?
Yes. One, I would say that, like I said, a lot of people think depression means not getting out of bed. And I just want people to know it's so much more than that. Um, it can show up in so many ways and have lots of different, like I said, cognitive, emotional, mental, deficits, and that no one needs to suffer. There's so much help out there. There's so like what you're doing is incredible. And I think that there needs to be a lot more education about, which is exactly what you're doing, but about perinatal and postpartum and all that. Um, that there's so much help out there. So definitely that depression and anxiety, and it can come with anxiety, and it can come with OCD, and it can come with intrusive thoughts, and just all of that. It's so much more than what we think it is. Um, Another thing, I personally believe a lot in recovery postpartum, and I'm like, even if you feel good, people like, I felt good. I felt good in my last 2. I'm like, even if you feel good. Number 1, you never get that time back. No one's ever telling you when your baby's 6 months, like, oh, climb into bed and just think about you and your baby. No, you never, ever, ever get that time back. And even if you feel good, your body is doing
Has to
so
recover.
much to like
Hmm.
readjust and get itself
Hmm.
back. And I'm like, even if you feel good, rest and recover. And if people are worried about being bored, people are like, how, like, get a stack of books, listen to this podcast, listen to things. Like, there are things we can do, but not making a baby bubble for yourself and creating a postpartum plan. Really talk about that, and in advance with your husband, being on the same page, talking about postpartum together. I made this like postpartum survival handbook, um, for moms. And I polled a ton of moms and asked them, like, what do you wish you knew when you were having your first? And I used a lot of their information plus everything from MSP up, to create this. And because I just feel like there's too much, especially in America with the 6 weeks thing, there's just too much of like, get back and look fine and be okay and do things with your baby. And like you said, like, oh, you look amazing. Like, like, I don't know
Yeah.
what that's supposed to
Yeah.
mean, but like,
Right.
we need to, yeah, that
Right.
would definitely be the second one. And then the third one I'll say is that medication is really a wonderful, wonderful tool. I wish people were less afraid of it, and to know that you can try it. You can always go off of it. Like, it's not a life sentence. It doesn't have to be. And to know that it could be tremendously helpful, tremendously helpful.
Oh, this is so fabulous. Before we go, Adina, you have your own podcast, don't you?
Yes.
Tell us about that. So I'm happy for you to promote it. Tell us about your podcast.
Well, it's funny how the whole thing started. So, with my therapist, I loved my therapy. I loved it, loved it, loved it. And then at one point, I was just like, I want these tools, right? I think most people come into a helping space because of what they've been through, and now they want to help others. I think that's very, very common. And so I really wanted that. And actually, together with my therapist, she was the one that really encouraged me become a life coach. I had never even heard of a life coach, and so I looked into that. And it's interesting because once I did, certifications and was like really within the life coaching world, I said to her, I'm like, I feel like you were my life coach. I feel like we did life coaching, not therapy. And she said, Adina, that's because of your personality and how you made our sessions. Not everyone's like that. Like, I came with a notebook and pen, and I was like, what's my homework? What's my job? Like, I was like, here's where I am. Here's where I want to be. Get me there. And when she would say, like, why do you think you have the low self-esteem? I'm like, I don't care why. Like, as my mother does. Like, I don't know. Like, really, I don't really want to talk about why. I want to talk about how to become confident. It was just like I would just always go like future focused. And anyway, so I became a life coach, and started with like all moms, and then kind of like niche to Jewish moms, and then kind of Chabad moms, because that's who was coming with to me. That was my community. And so I was doing like a lot of like Facebook lives, and I had like a Facebook group, and then people asked if there could be an audio platform to it. So I just put it on a podcast. Like, I didn't have a podcast. I kept denying I have a podcast. I put the audios, what I was doing, on my podcast, and then it kind of evolved into different things. So I do have a podcast called the Confident Chabad Mom Podcast. Um, that's just sort of a
I
side
love it.
thing. And then, yeah, and I coach Chabad Moms and I have a group also, a mom group.
I love
Yeah.
that. I absolutely love that. Thank you for being a resource to your individual community, but also the community at large. This has been a very powerful conversation. Thank you for saying yes.